In the heart of a once peaceful suburban neighborhood, a battle brewed that would redefine the lives of many residents. For years, the narrator reveled in the serenity of their property, a lush stretch of land that had been in their family for generations. This parcel, rich with memories and dreams, represented stability and comfort. However, tranquility was shattered when the local Homeowners Association, HOA, announced plans to build a condominium complex adjacent to the narrator's land. The HOA, established to enhance community living and maintain property standards, had taken a controversial turn under new leadership. The board's vision for development promised increased revenue and modern living spaces to attract new residents. Yet, for those who had long called the neighborhood home, it felt like an invasion rather than an improvement. The proposed condos would not only encroach on the narrator's cherished property, but also alter the landscape forever. The emotional stakes were palpable. This was not merely about land, it was about heritage and belonging. As plans developed, so did the sense of urgency among neighbors who shared similar concerns. Informal meetings at kitchen tables transformed into organized protests as community members gathered to voice their discontent. The HOA's dismissive attitude only fueled their resolve. Residents felt sidelined in decisions that drastically affected their lives. With each passing day, anxiety grew alongside construction markers dotting the landscape, signaling an irreversible change. Realizing that dialogue alone wouldn't suffice, the narrator sought legal counsel to challenge the HOA's authority over their land. This was uncharted territory, navigating local ordinances and zoning laws while grappling with feelings of betrayal from an organization meant to protect them. Armed with determination but unsure of what lay ahead, they plunged into a legal battle against the HOA. The conflict soon escalated into a full-blown courtroom drama as preparations for trial began. Tension filled the air when both sides presented their cases. The narrator fought fiercely not just for themselves, but for all residents who felt overlooked by those in power. As evidence mounted against the HOA's claims of entitlement to build on disputed land, hope flickered amid despair. This opening act set the stage for an eventual confrontation that no one could predict. The community watched with bated breath as they prepared for what would become a pivotal moment in their shared story. A struggle not only for one piece of land, but for autonomy against an entity they believed had forgotten its purpose. As emotions ran high and legal strategies unfolded, anticipation grew around what could be decided in this upcoming courtroom showdown. With each passing moment leading up to that fateful day in court, it became clear. This conflict was much larger than condos versus homes. It was a fight for identity and justice rooted deep within every person who called this neighborhood home. The land in question was more than just property to the narrator. It was a living tapestry of memories woven through decades. Generations had walked its paths, planted its trees, and gathered under its sprawling branches for family celebrations. The narrator's grandparents had purchased the property when it was still a quiet patch of wilderness, a place where their children could roam freely and explore nature. Stories of summers spent catching fireflies and winter nights by the fireplace echoed through the family's gatherings, imbuing the land with an unmistakable charm that had long captivated their hearts. As the narrator grew up, this land became a sanctuary, a safe haven from the chaos of the outside world. They remembered building forts with childhood friends, climbing the strong limbs of an ancient oak, and sitting quietly by the small stream that wound through the property. Every corner held a memory, a spot where they learned to ride a bike, a place where they took long walks with their beloved dog, or even a bench where many contemplative moments unfolded. To the narrator, this piece of earth was intertwined with their identity, its history deeply rooted within them. When they inherited the land from their parents, it felt like receiving a sacred trust. The narrator was determined to honor their family's legacy while ensuring the land remained untouched, a verdant refuge amid what was becoming an increasingly crowded suburban landscape. They envisioned it as part of their future, where they could raise their own family and impart the same values of stewardship and connection to nature that had been handed down through generations. However, such dreams collided violently with modern development aspirations as the HOA took aim at transforming the surrounding area into a bustling hub of new condominiums. The narrator's peaceful refuge suddenly faced an existential threat. Construction plans underscored the realization that what had once been home now teetered on the brink of obliteration. The proposed high-rise condos symbolized not only encroachment on physical space, but also a profound cultural shift that sought to replace tradition with transience. The emotional toll became increasingly burdensome as memories clashed with new realities. Each meeting, each protest against the HOA's decisions felt like a desperate plea for recognition, not just in legal terms, but as a validation of their family's history and the importance of preserving that legacy for future generations. The land wasn't merely an asset. It was a living entity that bore witness to laughter and tears alike. Thus began not only the battle for land but also a poignant reminder that heritage and identity are intrinsic to who we are. The struggle transcended legal boundaries, resonating deeply within every resident who understood that when you fight for your home, you fight for history itself, something that no condominium could ever replicate or replace. The conflict escalated when the Homeowners Association, HOA, announced its ambitious plans to construct a series of condominiums on what was once considered common land adjacent to the narrator's property. The HOA justified this development by claiming it would increase property values, attract younger families, and provide urgently needed housing in the area. In their communications, they painted a picture of progress and modernization, suggesting that the new condos would seamlessly integrate into the neighborhood while offering contemporary amenities that would appeal to potential residents. The initial proposal came to light during a routine HOA meeting, where board members rolled out glossy presentations filled with renderings of the proposed units. As residents gathered, whispers of disbelief and concern rippled through the crowd. Many longtime homeowners felt blindsided. They had been unaware of any discussions related to such significant development and worried about the potential destruction of cherished green spaces. The notion of replacing familiar landscape with high-rise units triggered not just anxiety over property values, but also a deep-seated fear of losing the community's identity. Following the announcement, the HOA set forth a timeline aimed at swift execution. Planning meetings sprang up weekly, with construction start dates projected for just a few months later. Speed was clearly part of their strategy. They intended to push through approvals before dissent could fully mobilize. Flyers were posted throughout the neighborhood inviting residents to voice their opinions, but many felt that these gatherings served more as tokens than genuine opportunities for input. The decisions seemed predetermined, leaving little room for community-driven dialogue. In response to the HOA's bold actions, an undercurrent of resistance began to build within the community. Informal gatherings sprouted at local parks and coffee shops, where neighbors shared their concerns and organized brainstorming sessions on how to respond. By and large, individuals who had once barely conversed began to unite over shared values regarding their homes and environments. As opposition grew, so did feelings of frustration towards the HOA. What was intended as an organization for neighborhood improvement had transformed into an unwelcome force disrupting their lives. Tension escalated as residents felt compelled to take action. Signs began appearing on lawns, "Save our community," and "No condos here." The grassroots movement rapidly gained momentum, fostering a sense of camaraderie among those who feared for their beloved homes and lifestyles. A collective letter was drafted and sent to the HOA board, urging them to reconsider their plan and engage in meaningful dialogue with residents. As construction markers began appearing, revealing the true scale of what was planned, residents could no longer remain passive observers. The combination of outrage, determination, and desperation pushed them toward a confrontation with an organization that seemed more focused on profit than preserving what made their neighborhood special. This growing tension would soon propel them into a fierce battle for both land and legacy, a confrontation between progress and preservation that threatened to define their community for years to come. Faced with the HOA's impending plans for condominium construction, the narrator knew that merely protesting or rallying community support would not be enough to protect their land. Determined to take a stand, they quickly sought legal counsel familiar with property law and zoning regulations. Together, they began drafting a formal challenge against the HOA, laying the groundwork for a legal battle that would test their resolve and determination. The first step was to scrutinize the HOA's claims of authority over the land. The narrator and their attorney combed through decades of documents that traced ownership and usage rights, looking for any possible legal loopholes or inconsistencies in the HOA's arguments. As they delved deeper into local ordinances and past agreements made by the HOA, it became apparent that several procedural steps had been overlooked in the planning process. This revelation fueled their hope. Perhaps a clear violation could halt construction before it even began. With evidence in hand, they filed a formal complaint with the local zoning board. This action triggered a series of required public hearings where both sides could present their cases. However, as the narrator prepared for these meetings, they faced numerous obstacles. The HOA was well-funded and had access to experienced attorneys who were adept at navigating bureaucracy and bending regulations to their favor. Meanwhile, the narrator found themselves limited by financial constraints, relying heavily on personal savings and community donations to fund legal fees. Despite these challenges, each hearing became an opportunity to amplify their message. The narrator spoke passionately about their family's history with the land and articulated community concerns about preserving green spaces in an increasingly urban environment. Their authenticity resonated with many who attended, drawing support from neighbors who echoed similar fears about losing what little natural beauty remained in their neighborhood. As court dates approached, tensions escalated further. The HOA continued to push forward with its construction timeline, erecting signs announcing upcoming groundbreaking ceremonies while legal proceedings were still underway. This show of force added pressure on the narrator and their supporters. Frustration mounted as it felt like time was slipping away. In response, the narrator rallied fellow residents not only to mobilize support but also to document any illegal activities related to construction. Taking photographs, gathering eyewitness accounts of violations related to environmental assessments or building permits. They submitted these findings as additional evidence when petitioning local authorities for intervention. As preparations intensified for what would become a monumental court clash between them and the powerful HOA board, both sides were clearly digging in for a drawn-out fight over property rights and community identity. The stakes had never felt higher. It wasn't just about stopping construction. It was about asserting one's place within a community fighting against disregard for its values and history. With hearts full of hope yet tinged with anxiety about how this legal battle would unfold, they steeled themselves for an impending confrontation that would determine not only their fate, but also pave new pathways for future generations living in harmony with Mother Nature amidst an encroaching urban landscape. The day of the hearing arrived, a moment that had been eagerly anticipated and dreaded in equal measure. As the narrator entered the grand courthouse, the weight of the stakes settled heavily on their shoulders. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Supporters from the community filled the benches, their faces a mix of hope and apprehension. This was not just a courtroom. It felt like the last bastion for defending their home against an encroaching development. At the front of the room sat the judge, a seasoned figure with an air of authority that commanded attention. They reviewed the case file with a keen eye, preparing to dissect the arguments from both sides. To the left were the HOA representatives, a team of well-dressed attorneys who exuded confidence and composure, ready to assert their claim over the property. They were armed with data, studies, and projections that painted a rosy picture of economic growth and community enhancement, a stark contrast to the emotional narratives from the opposing side. As the hearings commenced, the narrator's attorney rose to present their case. With clarity and conviction, they outlined the community's historical connection to the land, arguing that the HOA's actions were not only legally questionable but also morally inappropriate. They pointed out procedural missteps, highlighting how crucial public input had been sidelined in favor of expedited profits. Each detail sparked murmurs of agreement among community supporters, who nodded in solidarity. The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing at the documents presented as evidence. Each powerful statement seemed to resonate within the courtroom, creating a palpable sense of unity among those present. The narrator's heart raced as they recalled their family's history on this land. The laughter, the gatherings, the steadfast memories woven into every inch of soil. Then it was time for the HOA's attorneys to respond. They launched into a calculated defense, emphasizing economic benefits and downplaying community concerns. Their tone was dismissive, almost condescending, as they attempted to undermine the emotions articulated by the narrator's side. The judge kept a steady gaze, occasionally interjecting with pointed questions that revealed cracks in their arguments, forcing them to confront inconsistencies in their claims. As the proceedings continued, pivotal moments unfolded. Testimonies from supportive neighbors underscored the emotional ties to the land and passionately articulated fears about losing their beloved community. Each voice added fuel to the fire of resistance burning within the courtroom. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, it was time for closing statements. The narrator stood before the judge, heart-pounding yet resolute. They spoke not just as an individual but as a representative of a united community fighting for its identity. Their words carried weight, infused with personal history and collective dreams for preservation. When the judge finally rendered their decision, a hush fell over the room. The sentence delivered was succinct yet powerful, striking down the HOA's plans with one definitive ruling based on procedural violations and a profound respect for community heritage. Relief washed over the narrator as tears glistened in their eyes. A monumental victory had been achieved not just for them, but for everyone who cherished their home. In that moment, it became clear that justice had prevailed, and their fight had not been in vain. As the judge's gavel struck to signal the closing of deliberations, a hush fell over the courtroom, thick with expectation. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anxiety and hope as all eyes turned toward the bench, where the presiding judge prepared to deliver their ruling. It had been a long and arduous journey for the narrator and their community, and this moment carried the weight of their collective struggle. With a calm demeanor and an unwavering gaze, the judge began by reflecting on the arguments presented throughout the hearings. They acknowledged the emotional pleas of the community, coupled with a firm understanding of the legal framework governing the case. In that defining moment, the judge distilled the complexities of this dispute into one powerful sentence that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. I hereby nullify the HOA's plans for development due to procedural violations that undermine the community's rightful input in this process. This single statement was like a bolt of lightning crashing through the tension-filled air. The ruling immediately rendered the HOA's construction plans void, signaling that their path to development had been irrevocably blocked. The legal reasoning behind this decision hinged on several key points. First, the judge recognized that vital public participation had been neglected throughout the planning stages. This oversight indicated a failure to adhere to local ordinances designed to protect community interests. Furthermore, by emphasizing that the well-being of the community must take precedence over profit motives, the judge reaffirmed a principle central to property law. Citizens should have a voice in decisions that fundamentally affect their homes and heritage. The ruling sent a resounding message that procedural integrity was paramount, establishing that even established organizations like the HOA were not above accountability. The immediate impact of this decision rippled through the courtroom, eliciting spontaneous reactions from those present. A wave of relief washed over the narrator and their supporters. Tears of joy mixed with shouts of triumph filled the space as buzzing voices erupted in celebration. For them, it was not only a legal victory, but also an emotional catharsis, validating their efforts and reaffirming their connection to their land. Yet along with elation came a sense of caution. The narrator understood that while this moment represented a hard-won battle against an overwhelming force, it would not necessarily signify an end to conflict. The HOA might regroup and attempt to challenge the ruling through appeal or further legal maneuvers. However, fortified by this remarkable win, the community felt invigorated and emboldened. They had proven that their voices mattered in shaping their environment. The judge's ruling became a touchstone for future advocacy efforts in the neighborhood. It invigorated discussions about civic engagement and ensured that residents remained vigilant against encroachment, ready to defend their rights at a moment's notice. In that pivotal moment, justice prevailed, not just for one individual, but for an entire community united in purpose and bound by shared history. In the wake of the judge's ruling, the community buzzed with a mix of emotions, each individual processing the monumental decision in their own way. Many residents who had supported the narrator throughout the ordeal felt an overwhelming sense of victory and relief wash over them. They gathered in celebration at a local park that had served as a makeshift meeting spot during the protests against the HOA's plans. Cheers erupted as neighbors hugged and high-fived, their laughter cutting through the tension that had gripped them for months. For these supporters, this was more than just a legal win. It was a reaffirmation of their right to have a say in their neighborhood and the preservation of their shared history. However, not everyone shared in the jubilation. Members of the HOA were visibly dismayed by the ruling. Some stood in stony silence, grappling with unexpected defeat. Their plans, once deemed foolproof and beneficial by many within the organization, had now been dismantled. Rumors began circulating that there would be an appeal, but that idea was met with skepticism among some HOA members who started questioning whether their aggressive approach had alienated community members rather than fostering unity. Among those dissenting voices was a vocal member of the HOA board, who argued that they had been acting in the best interest of the neighborhood, aimed at revitalization and modern housing solutions. In sharp contrast to the celebratory atmosphere among supporters, discussions among HOA members turned into heated debates about how to respond. This internal turmoil hinted at deeper fractures within the association, revealing that not all members agreed on how to proceed after this significant setback. The broader implications of the ruling resonated beyond this singular case. Residents across the community began to reassess their relationships with the HOA, reflecting on the balance of power and influence these organizations held over everyday decisions. Many found themselves inspired by what they had witnessed during this legal battle. It prompted conversations about transparency and accountability within homeowners associations and encouraged neighbors to remain engaged in local governance. For some, particularly newer residents who may have initially sided with the HOA, this pivotal moment caused them to rethink their allegiance. They began attending neighborhood meetings, expressing their opinions, and demanding answers about development plans that might affect their homes and lives in similar ways. The victory for the narrator acted like a ripple effect, urging others who felt disenfranchised or powerless to step forward and stand up for their rights. As community members took stock of their newfound empowerment following this ruling, they began laying groundwork for a more collaborative relationship with one another as well as existing governing bodies. They organized forums aimed at educating residents about their rights regarding property development and suggested creating advisory committees to ensure ongoing dialogue with HOA leadership. This proactive stance marked a turning point for the neighborhood, a shift from passivity to vigilance that would endure long after this particular conflict had played out. In essence, while one battle had been won, it fueled a much larger movement within the community, a desire to reclaim their voice and shape their future collectively. The ruling served as both a victory and a catalyst for change, one that would resonate for years to come. In the weeks following the judge's ruling, the community remained abuzz with discussions about the implications of their hard-won victory. While many celebrated the decision as a defining moment in their fight for property rights, there was an underlying tension regarding the HOA's next steps. Despite the setback, rumors circulated that the HOA was considering an appeal to reverse the ruling, hoping to regain control over their development plans. The narrator and their attorney closely monitored any developments coming from the HOA, preparing for a potential legal battle that could extend this conflict further. They gathered evidence from supporters who had witnessed firsthand occurrences of procedural violations during the HOA's planning process. Ready to reinforce their case should an appeal arise, community members rallied around the narrator, emphasizing their commitment to standing firm against any resurgence of encroachment on their land. Meanwhile, within the HOA, a divide began to surface among its members. Some advocated for a reconsideration of their approach, suggesting dialogue with the community and exploring alternative projects that could address housing needs without sacrificing existing neighborhood character. Others remained fiercely loyal to the idea of pursuing an appeal, believing that yielding now would weaken their authority and open doors for more challenges in future developments. As deliberations continued within HOA meetings, many residents outside those walls took proactive measures to secure their neighborhood's future. The community organized forums focusing on education regarding property rights and local governance. They invited guest speakers, lawyers, and urban planners to inform residents about zoning laws and how they could collectively engage with local authorities moving forward. Empowered by newfound knowledge, citizens began drafting proposals aimed at ensuring transparent processes for any future developments in their area. Reflecting on how this ruling shaped understandings of property rights became a prominent theme of conversation within these gatherings. The narrator shared insights into how property is not merely a physical asset, but also represents identity and heritage. The overwhelming support they received underscored a critical realization. When voices unite for preservation rather than profit, they can enact remarkable change. This period also served as a reminder to neighboring communities facing similar threats from development interests. News media began shedding light on other homeowners' struggles against HOAs or developers who overlooked resident input. Inspired by what had transpired in this suburban neighborhood, nearby towns reached out for advice on mobilizing grassroots efforts toward meaningful change. As autumn leaves began to color the landscape outside, it became clear that although one immediate battle was won, it signified something much larger. The dawn of an era where communities would increasingly prioritize engagement over apathy and collective action, would combat encroaching development greedily seeking expansion without thought for local identity. With spirits high yet eyes wide open to potential challenges ahead, residents prepared themselves not only to defend what they held dear, but also to advocate for fair treatment in all future interactions between communities and governing bodies. Understanding that guardianship of one's home extends far beyond individual lots. It's about securing legacies for generations yet unborn. The ordeal faced by the narrator and their community served as a powerful lesson in the importance of legal knowledge, community activism, and standing up against unjust practices. One of the key takeaways was the realization that understanding local laws and regulations is essential for protecting property rights. The narrator's journey highlighted how procedural nuances can make a significant difference in legal battles, underscoring the necessity for residents to educate themselves about their rights and the mechanisms of local governance. This knowledge empowered them to successfully challenge the HOA's authority, demonstrating that informed citizens can influence outcomes. Another vital lesson revolved around the strength found in community solidarity. What began as individual concerns transformed into a collective movement that united neighbors in defense of their shared identity and heritage. The grassroots efforts to oppose the HOA's plans illustrated how collective action can amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard. Community meetings, rallies, and educational forums not only galvanized support but also fostered connections between residents who had previously been strangers, forging a tight-knit network ready to advocate for their neighborhood. The narrative also emphasized that activism should not solely be reactionary. Rather, it must be proactive. The residents learned to engage with local governance processes before issues escalated, advocating for transparency and accountability within the HOA system. They recognized that maintaining an ongoing dialogue with decision-makers is crucial for ensuring that community interests are prioritized over profit-driven motives. This shift towards proactive participation laid the groundwork for future developments and initiatives aimed at protecting their community's character. Moreover, the ruling against the HOA served as a reminder that standing up against injustice is vital, even when faced with significant opposition. The residents saw firsthand how resistance could lead to meaningful change, instilling a sense of empowerment that transcended individual property disputes. They understood that their fight was not just about one piece of land. It was about safeguarding their collective legacy for future generations. This experience also brought awareness to others facing similar threats in different communities. The media coverage of their struggle inspired neighboring towns to seek guidance on organizing their own defenses against encroachment by developers or aggressive HOAs. The lessons learned became a blueprint for advocacy that could resonate far beyond their neighborhood, a testament to the idea that when communities unite for a common cause, they can challenge entrenched power structures. As time progressed, the narrator and their fellow residents remained vigilant, ensuring they equipped themselves with the necessary tools and knowledge to navigate any future challenges. They continually emphasized that guardianship of one's home extends beyond mere ownership. It is about actively participating in shaping the environment where they live. In this journey, they discovered not only their strength, but also their capacity to inspire others in pursuit of justice and communal integrity. Through this lens of reflection, it was clear they had become stewards of both their land and their legacy. As the dust settled on the conflict between the narrator and the HOA, it became clear that this journey had transformed not only the individuals involved but also the entire community. The ruling that nullified the HOA's plans was more than just a legal victory. It marked a turning point in how residents approached their rights and responsibilities within their neighborhood. The narrator, who had once felt isolated in their struggle, emerged as a beacon of hope and resilience for others facing similar challenges. Reflecting on the ordeal, the narrator recognized that perseverance in the face of adversity had become a hallmark of their journey. The emotional toll of fighting against an organization that wielded significant power was immense, yet they found strength in the support of their neighbors and allies who shared a common cause. This experience underscored a profound truth. When individuals unite around a shared vision, they can surmount even the most daunting obstacles. The implications of this struggle extended far beyond the immediate fight against the condominium project. It sparked a renewed commitment among community members to engage actively in local governance and advocate for their interests. The momentum gained from the legal victory inspired residents to form committees focused on ensuring transparency and fostering open communication with local authorities. They understood that vigilance was not merely an option. It was a necessity for safeguarding their collective identity and heritage. As conversations about property rights and community engagement continued, the narrator witnessed a shift in the culture of their neighborhood. People began to come together not just during crises, but also to celebrate local traditions, support local businesses, and collaborate on community projects. This newfound unity fostered an environment where residents felt empowered to voice their opinions and contribute to decision-making processes that affected their lives. The narrator's journey also served as an inspiration for others facing similar threats in different communities. News of their victory spread, encouraging residents elsewhere to take action against encroaching developments and advocate for their rights. The lessons learned became a guidebook for civic activism, emphasizing that ordinary citizens have the power to effect change when they stand together. In closing, this experience reinforced the idea that every challenge presents an opportunity for growth and transformation. Through adversity, the narrator and their community found not only their voices but also their strength. As they looked toward the future, they held on to the belief that if they remained united and committed to their shared vision, they could continue to protect what mattered most: their homes, their history, and their hopes for generations to come. Ultimately, this journey illuminated a hopeful message. Perseverance in the face of adversity can lead to remarkable change, inspiring others to rally for justice and reclaim their rightful place in shaping the communities they love. With renewed spirit and determination, the narrator and their neighbors stepped forward into a future filled with promise. A testament to the enduring power of solidarity and advocacy in the quest for equality and respect.